Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the C.L. Bryant Show. I am C.L. Bryant, and I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here tonight, especially our friends in southern Arkansas and over in East Texas, up there in Wilmington, North Carolina, at WLTT there for welcoming. I want to thank you for welcoming us into your family and throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known, and that is America. We are coming to you live from the jeweled cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport and Bossier City, my hometown. And I want to, of course, give a shout out to every one of our sponsors collectively for being here with us, going on our third year. Got a jam-packed show for you. A lot to talk about tonight. The number to call will be 320-5335, 320-5335, 318-320-5335. Mardi Gras season has kicked off officially here in Louisiana. Yeah, les bon temps roulés. Let the good times roll. And you know, that's why preachers here in Louisiana have to preach so hard, is because Louisianians have that type of DNA where we will celebrate at the drop of a hat. Mardi Gras season is up on us. And tonight, in fact, down on the Riverwalk, I believe it is, there is an art walk going on downtown there from 5 to 8. So if you're out and about listening to the show, why don't you stop by and see what's happening, help support some of the things that's going on right here in the Arklatex area, particularly here in the jeweled cities. Let's turn our attention now to what's going on a little bit on the national stage. You know what? The strength of liberalism is that once you give someone something in the liberal's mind, and then you want to take it away, hey, you're evil. You better believe it. And that it works in any, it plays out through any scenario. Once people think that you are their ticket, and then you turn out to say to them, hey, you got to punch your own ticket. You got to get your own ticket. And you take the ticket that you were letting them ride on away from them, you're evil to them. And they try to make you evil to everyone else. Does that make you evil? No, it doesn't. But liberals have been very good at promoting and pushing the scenario that those who want to take away what particularly government has given are folks who are evil. The difference between liberalism and conservatism is simply this. Conservatives say that liberals are wrong. Liberals paint conservatives as evil. And somehow that plays really, really good. It is a strength. Now, the top cop in Chicago has said, I'll give you a scenario of how liberalism works. He said in lieu of the over 700 deaths, 80% of them are black, in lieu of the 700 deaths that have occurred in Chicago this past year, over 4,000 shootings in this past year, he has come to the conclusion that the Black Lives Matter movement has contributed to a climate where it emboldens criminals. And in doing so, the reason he says that is that it gives them a pathway. And you remember Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of Chicago, and others, including the President Obama, and Democrats in particular, Nancy Pelosi, especially when it came to Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, and all of that type thing. So you have a white and black thing. You're just not talking about Black Lives Matter. You have white kids out there, too, promoting the same thing because there's been an overall brainwashing of young people in this country, regardless of their skin color. But what George Soros has managed to do is pump $100 million into the Black Lives Matters movement, made it very significant. But what the top cops are saying around this country, especially the one in Chicago where all the murder is taking place, the hometown, the adopted hometown of President Obama, he is saying that what that has done is embolden criminals to act out against authority. That's why I'm very strong on law and order. And no, it is not a buzzword. It is not a code word for, hey, let us attack this group of people. No, it's not. The people who are dying in droves, 80% of those who have been killed in that 700 number of murders in Chicago were black young men. And no, the police did not kill them. They attack each other, and you have these liberals saying this. Let me tell you what the liberal narrative is to these murders, and this also emboldens these things, embolden this to continue. And it can take hold in any community. It can take hold in Shreveport. It can take hold in Bossier. It can take hold in your child's school, your child's college. Right here, it can take hold at LSUS, Susbo. It can take hold at Grambling. They say it's because they're doing this, the kids are doing this to each other, is because they don't have any employment, anything else to do. Well, that may be true because unemployment among black youths under Obama is absolutely rampant. It's always been high under any president in this country. It's always been high. But he certainly has not improved. In fact, it's gotten worse. But when you give that type of pass, is that they don't have anything else to do but kill each other? What kind of lunacy is that? We'll be back, talk a little bit more about it. I'm CL. Don't go anywhere. CL, back with you on this Wednesday here in the jeweled cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier, broadcasting throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. I want to thank our friends in Wilmington, North Carolina, for bringing us into the area, and all of our friends in southern Arkansas and East Texas. Thank you for joining us here in the Arklatex, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas here tonight. Making us one of the most popular shows in the Arklatex, the C.L. Bryant Show. And we will continue our conversation about the lunacy and the enabling Black Lives Matter to defy law and order by actually promoting. And I'm gonna step out on that limb. They're promoting the deaths of young black kids in the inner city in Chicago. And yes, George Soros is funding it. We'll talk more about it. But joining me now is a regular on the show, a friend of the show. He is Carl Higbee. And I got to tell you something. He is a great American. He has worn our uniform. He is a former Navy SEAL, former congressional candidate. He is the former spokesman of the Great America PAC for DJT, Donald J. Trump, the future president here within 16 days of the United States. Carl, welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here tonight. Carl is going to be on with Megyn Kelly. Carl, there is a lot of stuff going on in the news media about the Russian hacking and Julian Assange. We have Julian saying that the Russians didn't do it. You have our intel community saying, yes, they did. How are you looking at this? How are you seeing it?
Well, I've actually been on CNN pretty much the majority of today battling this out, and where the left is saying that, they have all 17 agencies agree. It's like, well, hold on, let's back it up a step. All 17 agencies agree that Russians are trying to hack America. Now, that does not make them agree on the fact that they're trying to hack the election. Nobody has concluded anything to say that what they did affected the election in any way, shape, or form. What the Democrats are doing here is they're trying to make the case that the Russians hacked the DNC. All these things they were released by WikiLeaks. I genuinely believe that the Russians did not hack the DNC. I think they have plenty of other things that they'd much rather hack than that. But let's say what is happening by the Democrats' viewpoint is true. Let's say the Russians hacked and gave the information that everybody thought but nobody can confirm to the American public. The Democrats are trying to argue that they wanted the American people to have less information before they voted. Mm-hmm. Does that sound very Democratic to you?
No, that doesn't. And let me ask you this too: is this just sour grapes?
Yeah, they got crushed. This is like an electoral landslide. And I know the argument that the left makes is, she won the popular vote by almost 3 million people. Yeah, okay. So then your argument about Russia influencing the election doesn't work. But if you want to break down to things that don't matter, like the popular vote, let's break down the geographical vote, where Trump won 98% of the country geographically. So if they want to go tit for tat with these things that don't actually matter, fine. But we won the Electoral College, so who cares?
Absolutely right. And you take California out of the mix, she loses even the popular vote by over 1 million votes. So
if you take L.A. County out, he wins the popular vote.
Is that right? And that is absolutely amazing. That is, and in fact, that actually strengthens the argument for the Electoral College. If you look at it, it really does strengthen the argument. Now, you've been a small business owner, and I am too. And the thing that I am very impressed with here with our incoming president, Donald J. Trump, is this. I think he's going to create a new optimism for small business owners as well as corporations in this country. How are you seeing that playing out?
Well, I see a guy who's built business after business. Now, look, Trump is one business, but he's founded thousands of business under that, from golf courses to steaks to wines to this to everything. So he understands that regulations only hinder businesses. The government doesn't create anything. And we've had these bureaucrats, like, people say that Trump isn't qualified. Well, what made Barack Obama so star-spangled awesome that he was so qualified after a half-term senator? I mean, let's be honest here. Donald Trump is the most qualified business to face the current challenge, most qualified president to face the current challenges of the day.
I agree. And when we look at business internationally and when we look at it here nationally, I remember the first time I interviewed President-elect Trump was in New Orleans, and he was saying at that time that he was tired of the Chinese treating us like chumps. Do you think that our adversaries like the Chinese are getting the message now that there is a new sheriff in town? How do you see that playing out?
I totally see it. And, the thing is, and people are, the biggest thing right now we have is the Chinese, we have the trade deficit and they manipulate their currency and all that. But the biggest factor we have on the table right now is Russia. Russia, someone should knock on the door of the DNC and say, hello, it is not the Cold War anymore. We cannot continue to fight a Cold War proxy-style war like we are in Syria right now, like we did in Afghanistan back in the 80s, because it never works. So the biggest threat is Russia. Russia is our biggest physical threat. Now, cyber and currency, maybe China and trade. But right now, this first and foremost, Putin and Trump got to get on the same page in the Middle East. If we don't have that, we don't have global security.
Is it true that when it comes to nuclear warheads and so forth, Russia does outweigh us as far as numbers is concerned? And is it true that they are modernizing, the Russians, while we are basically standing still at this point in time under this president? You would know. How is that shaking out?
Well, yes. And I mean, Russia is always constantly trying to advance. Look, we are more advanced than they are, but Russia is trying to advance on things like that. But, I'm not worried about Russia and their nuclear weapons. I'm worried about Iran getting its one nuclear weapon, because Iran will use it. Russia hasn't used it. They're not going to use it. They know the ramifications. And both countries, we could destroy the world hundreds of times over with the current weapons and stockpiles we do have. So it's irrelevant if we have more or less than them. We still have more than enough. And the issue is, we have to understand that it is not the guy with 1,000 nukes. It's the guy with one. And that is something. And if Russia wants to, do their thing and threaten their nuclear arsenal with us, fine. They're not going to launch a nuclear weapon.
We're on with Carl Higbie, former Navy SEAL and great American, and we're going to be back with him. He just said something incredibly profound. It's not the guy with 1,000 nukes. It's the guy with one crazy, in particular when we talk about Iran. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. Stay tuned. We'll be back with Navy SEAL Carl Higbie. CL, back with you on this Wednesday here in the jeweled cities of the Arklatex. All of our friends throughout the fruited plains of America, thank you so much for joining us. And you here in the Arklatex area, I want to thank you for making us the most popular, most listened to in the Arklatex. On with us is former Navy SEAL Carl Higbie. He'll be on with Megan Kelly. Tune the show in tonight. Always interesting insight that Carl Higbie brings to any conversation. We have been talking about the Russian hacking. We've come to the conclusion that the Russians probably have better things to do than hack into the DNC. And also, we've come to the conclusion that quite possibly this is just sour grapes by those who lost this ballyhooed and storied election of the ages. And so I can see that. But, Carl, I want to ask you this about the treatment of Barack Obama in this sense. You remember the debate between Romney and Barack Obama. Candy Crowley was moderating that debate. And during that debate, Barack Obama said these words, the 80s have called and they want their Cold War back. I have not heard anyone say anything about how wrong Obama was when Romney confirmed what you have said to us tonight, that the Russians were our greatest threat. Why has Obama gotten a pass on failing so with international leaders like Putin?
Well, it's because he fails on so many things. They don't know which one to hold him accountable for. He's been wrong about, let's see, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, your doctor, whatever. That was wrong. The Russian reset, that worked out swimmingly. He talked about all kinds of things with ISIS being the JV team. I mean, this guy has blundered nearly every single major factor of his presidency. So, and he gets a pass no matter what. So, I mean, you have major mainstream media networks basically covering the bases for him. So I'm not surprised he's getting a pass, but he's gone in like 15 days, so who cares? Our
military in the future, you have worn our uniform, you have served with our elites. Our military going forward, morale. I visit our servicemen and many times have done things for our servicemen, both here and nationally. But this is something that I want to hear from someone who has worn the uniform. What does a Donald Trump presidency, how many degrees are we talking about better are we looking at as far as morale is concerned?
Yeah, like somewhere to the tune of like 180.
Wow.
I mean, you know what the thing is the military respects somebody who covers their back, who sends them to rough places, and then takes their back if they even make a mistake. Like, look at how Trump handled the Corey Lewandowski and Michelle Fields issue back during the campaign. Any candidate would have fired their campaign manager with simply the allegations of grabbing a reporter. But what did Trump do? He stood by his guy's side until the video came out and it turned out she was full of crap.
Yeah.
So that is what the military sees in a guy like Donald Trump. Also, Obama loathes people in uniform. He doesn't like law enforcement. He doesn't like military, much as Hillary Clinton doesn't. So Donald Trump has enormous respect for those in uniform. He has enormous respect for those serving the country. But one of the biggest things is that military is nervous about Syria. And will that be the next global conflict? Will it be the next Iraq or Afghanistan? That is something they're very worried about right now.
And when we look at Syria and we look at the Middle East in particular, our greatest friend there is Israel. There's a piling on, it appears, going on in the state of Israel itself, with Bibi Netanyahu being blamed and accused of all types of things. Is this administration still behind the scenes in stirring that type of thing up, in your estimation?
You know what? Obama is trying to do all sorts of things behind the scenes in order to try to discredit any action for Donald Trump's presidency. I mean, look, the things he's doing now by dispelling the Russian diplomats, we've never done that before. Like, you just kick out 30-something Russian diplomats on basic claims that many intelligence agencies do not even agree on. But this is the guy who Obama has constantly taken whatever intel he's wanted and gone with it. ISIS, they told him ISIS was a real threat. He says it's JV. They tell him that Russian is hacking, but they can't say for sure that it's they've hacked the election, so or had any influence whatsoever on the election. So he goes ahead and dispels 30-something Russian diplomats. This guy is actively trying. You got to wonder, whose side is this Obama on?
I've asked that question from day one of his candidacy, especially when on the apology tour for America, in which we need no apology for who we are as Americans. Carl, what is the website? How can people get a hold of your thoughts and see what you're all about?
Well, you can go to carlhigbee.com. I pretty much post things on there and stay in touch with people through my social media. I'm on Twitter at Carl Higbee, and I'm on Facebook too. So I just learned how to use this Instagram thingy where apparently
Me too.
Pictures, which is great. Yeah.
Me too. My kids run circles around me, but just the same, I just learned how to do it. So, Carl, I want to thank you so much for first of all, your service to our country, your service that you're performing right now for our country and bringing clarity to a lot of conversation that many times we don't understand. And God bless you. Godspeed to you. And we'll talk to you real soon. Certainly hope you're back real soon with us.
Thank you, sir.
Carl Higbee has been on with us, former Navy SEAL. Tune him in tonight. Megan Kelly. We'll have him on. You'll get a chance to see him firsthand, but you heard him here first on the C.L. Bryant Show. Of course, a lot of these guys come on our show, and then they go on these big shows all together. I don't know if you caught me on Hannity the other day, but I was on Hannity the other day myself, on Hannity Radio, myself the other day, and with my good friend, another Navy SEAL. As you know, those are the types that I really like to hang around with, and I guess they like hanging with me too. That was our good friend Jonathan Gillum. We're going to be back in just a few minutes to talk a little bit more about those things that matter to us here sitting in the American living room.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
CL back with you here in the jeweled cities of the architect Shreveport and Bossier City. Thank all of you for joining us here tonight, and I want to give a special shout out, or I hate to say shout out, Michelle, but I'm going to say it anyway. I like to give a special shout out to our sponsors, each and every one of you who have made the show successful, helped make the show successful over this nearly 3-year period of time. And there have been friends of the show that we have had on periodically, and one of them is joining us now, a good friend of mine and someone I truly, truly had hoped would be our next senator from the state of Louisiana to Washington, D.C. But I know that the good Lord has other things, bigger, badder, and bolder for him to do as he proceeds down the road of life. And that is none other than my friend John Fleming. John, welcome back to the C.L. Bryant Show.
Well, Happy New Year, CL. Great to be with you again.
Happy New Year to you, Doctor. And I was wanting to talk to you about, I wanted to open up with you the statement that Chuck Schumer made a little bit earlier today, saying that making America great again will make America sick again. Dr. Fleming, please speak to that. And they're saying that we have no replacement for Obamacare if we take it down. Talk to it, if you would.
Oh, I tell you, the lies just never stop, CL. The Democrats lied to get Obamacare passed. They said that everybody would be covered and that your costs would go down. And you wouldn't have to give up your doctor. You wouldn't have to give up your insurance or your hospital. And, of course, all of those proved to be lies. We even found out from Gruber, Dr. Gruber, who was one of the architects, who was so smug about having lied that he bragged about it, and it got caught, of course, on video. And so now that it's desperately in trouble and they know it's going to be repealed, they're continuing to lie. There is no evidence, CL, that people are healthier under Obamacare. There's absolutely no evidence that they're better off in any way. And, in fact, more people than ever want to see it repealed.
And, you know, you were there back in 2009 when all of this was going down. Of course, at that point in time, Obama had all of the cards as far as the House and the Senate in his corner. And he shoved this down our throats. There's no question that the American people did not like this. Did you see at that time that this is the way the progressive machine in Washington operated, through lies and innuendo and fear tactics? How did that work? How did that play out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For instance, the president said a number of times that he would be happy to sit down with Republicans and go over the bill line by line. And a number of us reached out to him, and we never got a call back, never got a response to our letter. He never did that, but that was a promise that he made. He blamed us for not reaching across the aisle when, in fact, not one single Republican voted for it because it was so terribly left-wing. I mean, here's the bottom line. When you look back over the 8 years of Barack Obama and the progressive movement in America, what you really see is an attempt to socialize our culture and our government. And the way that they, instead of classic socialism where government owns everything, they would like to control it. So how did they do that? Number one, they passed a law that's more or less Obamacare for the banks, which is, of course, Dodd-Frank. They tried to pass cap and trade, which would put a tax on carbon, but they couldn't do that, so they put regulations out there that put coal-fired plants out of business, and they passed Obamacare. And the American people have resoundingly said, we don't want Washington controlling our lives. We want to run our own lives. And so now you're beginning to see all of the Obama socialistic agenda unravel before our very eyes.
One of the fears that I've seen in this country that's beginning to expand in the minds of some is an uncertainty about what will happen to Medicaid, Medicare, Medicaid in the country. I know that you have been a proponent of putting that in the hands of the state that you live in. Talk to us about that a little bit, Doc, as far as the advantages of that.
Well, take Medicaid. Medicaid is basically a program for the poor. It's health care for the poor. Classically, it was for people at 100% below the poverty line or 100% of the poverty line. With the Medicaid expansion, it's up to about 139% of poverty line. But it's a third-rate health care system. Nobody would rather be on Medicaid than on private insurance. And, of course, as a conservative, I want everyone to have access to private insurance. Even if you're poor, we can help you with that. But for heaven's sakes, Medicaid is full of fraud, waste, and abuse. And so how we would approach Medicaid, the plan, it has all along been that we would block grant the money to the state. That is to say, whatever money has been coming to Louisiana from Washington for Medicaid, we just write a check from Washington and give it to the state, and we let the governor and the legislature decide how to spend it. They could create state clinics if they wanted to, or they could create HMOs for private physicians. They could do whatever they want. Let each state do its own thing. So why would we do that? The reason is that as the money filters down CL from Washington, a lot of it gets siphoned off into fraud, waste, and abuse. The size of government absorbs it. You've got all sorts of clerks, both on the private side and the government side. So a small percentage of those dollars actually get the person they're intended to, and I think this would really help that tremendously and give states the ability to more wisely spend that money and create first-class health care for each state citizen.
And that's what we're looking for, first-class health care for our citizens. Now, the words that have come from the grassroots, John, as far as Obamacare was concerned, is repeal and replace.
Yeah.
Is that, in your estimation, from what you're seeing, you're fresh from Washington, is that something that can be realistic? And there was a Trump promise. Trump promised this. Will he be able to keep that promise?
Well, not only will he be able to keep that promise, it's going to happen.
Hold that thought right there, John.
Sure.
We're on with former Congressman John Fleming, Dr. John Fleming, friend of the show, friend of mine, and he's going to talk to us about the promise that Donald Trump is bound to keep through his campaign promises. I'm CL. There's a CL Bryant Show. Don't you go anywhere. We'll be back with Dr. John Fleming. CL with Dr. John Fleming on this Wednesday here in the jeweled cities of the Arctic, streaming live throughout the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. That is America. And Dr. Fleming served us here in Louisiana very well during his terms in office as our United States representative there in Washington, D.C. I'm so proud to have him on, so proud to have him as a friend. We were talking about Trump's promises to replace and repeal and replace Obamacare. And John, when we left, you were saying that absolutely he is going to keep that promise. Continue with that thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Senate has already begun the procedure. It's going to have to be repealed through something called reconciliation. It only requires 51 votes in the Senate because we don't have the 60 votes, the requisite 60 votes. And you may recall that Obamacare was passed actually in two bills back in 2010. One was the actual Obamacare itself. Ted Kennedy was senator. He was the 60th vote, and he voted for it. But there were still parts of it that had not been passed yet. By the time they got around to doing it, he had already passed away from brain cancer. Mm-hmm. So they had to do Senate reconciliation in order to get the second half passed. So we're going to go in reverse. We're going to pass part of it through reconciliation. And then through the executive orders, Trump will pretty much make it ineffective except for the parts that we want to work temporarily while we go through this smooth transition into what the replacement will be. So it's going to be somewhat confusing, and it's going to be somewhat complicated. But the process has already begun. It's going to happen. In fact, he may sign it the very first day of his office.
I certainly hope that he leaves from the swearing in, go to the Oval Office, and do what's necessary to be done, do exactly what he promised he would do. Now, my friend Tom Price had a plan on the table to actually replace this, a much better plan. Do you think they might resurrect this?
I think so. I mean, there's actually several plans. I co-authored a plan called the American Healthcare Reform Act with Steve Scalise. That was
I remember that,
Republican Study Committee. They all have basically the same elements, which is tax parity, so that whether you buy it yourself or through your employer, it's the same tax-wise. You can buy insurance across state lines. You can amalgamate small businesses so they can have thousands and tens of thousands of people on a plan. So we'll also probably see high-risk pools, either on the federal level or the state level. So to be honest, it's pretty predictable what we're going to see, and it may be passed piecemeal, one element at a time as we transition. But nobody's going to be kicked off their plan. Everybody is going, whether you have pre-existing illness, you're going to be able to keep your insurance. And
that's the great fear, John. That is the great fear that people have, is that they're going to lose what they got. And I see the Dems, the progressive liberals, they are riding that horse with spurs. But it is a lie, like you said earlier. It is a lie. You also mentioned these three sisters here: fraud, waste, and abuse. The American people are being duped by fraud. Our money's being wasted in these programs that really do not benefit the American people in any way. And we're being abused by big government. Is that age over? I mean, have we turned that corner where we can actually restore some sanity to some control to the American people, in your opinion?
I think we're well positioned to do that. Whether or not the American people and whether or not the Trump administration and Congress is going to have the courage to follow through with that is yet to be known. But I think we're closer to it now than we've been in my entire lifetime. Look at the cabinet picks. These are people, titans of industry, who are used to cutting out fraud, waste, and abuse, because that's how a private company survives, as you know. So I have a lot of hope. I have a lot of, optimism that this is going to happen. But it's tough. It's going to be tough to do. And even if he gets halfway, he will have accomplished far more than anyone else.
Absolutely. And you being a businessman extraordinaire, let me ask you this about the stance that Trump is taking with automobile companies like GM and Ford? What does it send the right message, in your opinion?
I think it does. It's primarily, I think, it's sort of sending a signal. I mean, these are not, in the bigger picture, these are not a lot of jobs, but it's making Americans feel optimistic that they have a president who's going to fight for them, who's going to fight for American jobs, who's going to stand up for America first. And so I think, at least symbolically, it is a good thing. And I think the follow-on, which is going to be tax reform and hopefully repeal of the Dodd-Frank bill, which, of course, is what the law which created so much damage to our banking system, that will be where the real jobs are created and where we'll see economic growth at 4.5%. One day, probably not too far in the distance, a Dow, it's at 30,000. So
that's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it really is. So it's a huge down payment, I think, on what's going to come later.
John, I think that your wisdom in Washington, D.C. will be sorely missed. Let me ask you this final question. Will we see you on the campaign trail any time in the near future?
Well, I don't have any immediate plans to run for office, but that could happen down the road depending on circumstances. Also, I've been approached by the Trump administration to weigh my interest in serving in the Trump administration at one level or another. And I'm not at liberty to say much about that.
Right,
but,
right.
So I may have the opportunity to execute on this reform that we're going through. So I don't think you've seen the last of me yet.
Well, I know that we have not, and they will be all the better for it. And if I can say anything to anybody on your behalf, I certainly will be glad to do that. Dr. John Fleming, our friend of the show, and I certainly appreciate you being on with me tonight. John, we'll be looking, we'll keep a sharp eye peeled to see what you're doing here in the future. God bless and keep you, my friend.
Thank you so much, CL. God bless you, my friend. Bye-bye.
We'll be back in just a few minutes with more of the C.L. Bryant Show. And, folks, I'm going to tell you something. Yeah, you have to keep an eye out for those three sisters: fraud, waste, and abuse. Fraud, waste, and abuse. The American people have been defrauded, certainly over these last 8 years. It has led to incredible waste. We're nearly $20 trillion in debt as far as the waste is concerned. And we have been abused by big government. But unfortunately, too many of us in this country are like that, what's the syndrome woman, the Swedish, the Stockholm syndrome woman or man who have been in captivity. You begin to identify and sympathize with your captors there in captivity, and you make excuses for them beating you and abusing you. That's what progressive liberalism is all about, making excuses for the instrument of your abuse, which is big government. I do believe that the era of big government is going to be finally over, and the republic, a government that's in the hands of the people, may very well be restored. With your vigilance, we can do it. I'm CL. We'll be back.
Sweating in the sun, felt like a million, felt like number one. The height of summer, I'd never felt that strong, like a rock.
Yeah, break on through to the other side is what we are doing, in the process of doing. 16 days away from breaking through to the other side. We'll take your phone calls now at 318-320-5335, 318-320-5335. I believe I have given out the right number. 318-320-5335 is the number to call if you want to talk to me tonight. Be happy to talk to you. Yeah, Chuck Schumer is saying that to making America great again with Donald Trump is making America sick again. Who do you have, Michelle? Socialist Stephen. Speaking of Stockholm Syndrome, Socialist Stephen. Oh man, glad you're with me, brother. How you been? Happy New Year, man. Are we gonna have a Donnybrook all year long? What's gonna be going on? I know that the first 100 days of the Trump administration is gonna drive you nuts.
If I would tell you what my week is like, there's been a lot since the New Year driving me nuts, but I can't go into it.
Give me a glimpse. Give me a glimpse. Maybe I can push that button.
Well, I can tell you it's in healthcare. I can tell you that. But anyway, can you say smoke and mirrors? Can you say smoke and mirrors?
That's what you think this is?
I wonder how many people actually listen to what politicians say and think this is real.
But let me tell you something, Stephen. It is real. You may not believe it, but you just hide and watch. You hide and watch.
They are going to pass a bill, maybe with 51. They're going with 51 because they're hoping they can get 51. Mm-hmm. And they're going to repeal Obamacare, and they're going to run it all up to Trump, and he's going to sign it. They're going to have a big party.
Yeah, that's true.
But the problem is, it ain't going to be a repeal, because buried in that bill is going to be a delay for 4 years.
Well, you know what?
And you know why? And you know why there's a delay?
Go ahead.
Because they don't have a plan that American people.
Oh, they've had plans. Listen, Tom Price has had plans.
They don't like none of them.
You heard? Wait a minute. You heard John Fleming. You heard John Fleming talking about a plan that he had. But this is what I want to ask you. This is what I want to ask you. You see, this is your trouble, Stephen. Donald Trump's tweeting is bothering you, isn't it? It's bothering you,
I
isn't
love
it?
I hope he continues all year long, because
what really gets me is that the party, your party won the White House both times through social media, yet you hate the fact that the new president who's coming in is actually affecting social media with his tweeting. I don't understand. What's wrong with that?
I'm not upset with his tweeting. Let him tweet. Let him tweet till his heart desires. I don't have a problem. Look. I love the part about fraud, waste, and abuse, like you said, and there's plenty of it.
There is.
I know in healthcare exactly where it is, and so does Dr. Fleming. Okay.
Man.
I know exactly where the fraud, waste, and abuse.
Well, you don't agree that American money. Wait a minute. You don't agree that American money has been absolutely wasted.
Oh, yes, it's being wasted
and for the most part, it's been Democrats who have wasted it.
And you're going to block grant $800 million with no strings attached and no.
Well, no. The idea of the republic is to have that operate in the state, Stephen. You know that. You know
what blew my mind yesterday, and I don't understand Hillary and the Democrats and how they ran this campaign, because I read something yesterday, because I know one of the main reasons Trump was voted in was to get rid of Obamacare. And I read something yesterday that just blew my mind. I never thought about.
Think about what was it?
So when Obamacare was passed, one of the pieces is a huge legislation. One of the pieces, but they knew there were going to be problems with cost of insurance. They knew it.
Yeah.
And so what they put in there was a 12% reimbursement to the insurance companies for the first 3 years.
Well,
to try to keep try to keep the cost of insurance down.
Well, the cost of insurance has not been kept down, though.
The insurance companies never got the cost reduction payments. You want to know why?
So are you saying that the President Obama actually he reneged on his promise to the insurance companies?
No. The Republicans refuse
No,
to,
no,
to
no, no.
put it in the budget to
No,
pay
no,
any
no,
of
no.
those
No,
reimbursements.
he
And they did it on purpose.
No,
So the
Obama
American
knew that.
people, and they have no plan right now. They have no plan.
If he had not pushed this through, we could have gotten a better plan. Let's go to your girl Hillary for just a minute. I see that the Clinton supporters, the nutty Clinton supporters are building what they're calling, Stephen, get this, a war room. And they are going to battle the Trump administration tooth and nail through what they're calling the war room. Why can't Obama leave the stage gracefully?
Oh my God, it's going to be ugly. It's not just them. The ACLU has geared up. Let me tell you something. This is not going to be pretty.
Go ahead. It ain't going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. Well, yeah, no, it's not going to be pretty.
Everything he does or signs, they are going to be after him. And, this man has no experience. And Obama's really smart.
No, well, Obama, let me tell you something. I agree. Wait a minute. I agree with you on one thing. Obama is really smart, and he is really smart. There is no way that anybody who's a dunce could have pulled off the catastrophe deliberately that he has pulled off in just 8 years. Usually it took this country over 200 years to get into the financial mess that Obama put it in just 8 years. That's how brilliant he is. Let me show you this too. Listen, the Dems are being driven mad by Trump's tweeting. Yes, I hope he's driving them crazy.
Just remember this. He ran circles around that Republican Congress.
Okay, yeah.
He ran circles around. Let me tell you, that was embarrassing for me to even watch and be on his side.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, man. All the best to you. Good talking to you. Happy New Year to you. I look forward to talking to you down the road.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's Socialist Stephen, folks. 3205-335-3205-335. There's a lot of lunacy that is going on. I'll take your calls even more after the break. Do you know what? DC Cannabis Coalition, they're raising their ugly head. I'm going to tell you what they're all about here right after after these commercial break messages. A word from our sponsor. CL, yeah, not only the boys back in town, the GOP is back in town. Yes, we have the presidency. Yes, we have the House and the Senate. The GOP is back in town. And on the line with me now is Dave. Dave, thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind, friend?
I just want to say Socialist Stephen is well educated, but he is just as misled as our President Barack Obama.
You're absolutely right, Dave.
He is so misled. You know I got to call in.
Oh, Dave, listen. Stockholm Syndrome, he is a victim of abuse, and he loves it. I don't know what it is about it.
I'm sorry, but he's just misled as can be. And he says Trump is not prepared for this, doesn't have the background for it. What did Barack Obama have besides an organizer?
That's it. And you know what?
I mean,
Trump is probably much more organized and better prepared to take on the role of CEO of the company.
That's what I'm talking about.
Than
Look,
anybody else.
Like I said many times before, I worked for an actor from, that worked with a monkey, and he was my best, chief of staff I've ever,
Let me ask you this.
Chief.
Let me ask you this, Dave.
Sure.
Speaking of the actor who worked with the monkey, Bonzo, you and I are old enough to remember Bonzo.
Yes.
Do you see shades of Reagan beginning to appear on the horizon?
I am seeing it's in multicolor.
Yeah.
It's not shades. It's going to be multicolor.
I believe
He is what he is proposing for his staff. It's going past and beyond color, sex, whatever. He is getting the proper person.
Yeah, in the right places.
And you've seen people that have gone against him in the past. He's willing to look beyond that.
And I do like that about him. You know what, man? I really do like that. Listen, I got to go. Got calls coming in.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Dave, for calling in. On the line with me now is Gloria. Gloria, thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind, friend?
Well, thank you for taking my call. The thing that I want to understand, the so-called Russians getting into the DNC websites and learning all the emails, what is so important and what did they find out that could have changed the election? I just keep hearing about the Russians, but what did they uncover?
They uncovered, to answer your question, Gloria, and that's a fantastic question that you have asked for everybody who's listening and want to know exactly what Gloria wants to know. They uncovered absolutely nothing. Trump was going to beat her like a drum either way it went. And Gloria, it's sour grapes is what it is. And they have to find somebody to blame because on election night, going into election night, everybody that you listened to had her crowned and had her coronated. They had her queenly robe on. She was going to be the next queen. And just about before 8:30, they were seeing that this was not going to play out, so they had to figure out something that they could blame for her defeat.
Well, I tell you what, the greatest thing happened whenever Trump won, but it makes me wonder, what are the elitists and the New World people doing trying to destroy Trump?
They are actually trying to. There are some, and you know what, Gloria, again, you're right on, because there are progressive liberals who are elitist and were a part of that New World Order. Let me tell you why you're right on. Hillary was supposed to become president, and then she was going to nominate or appoint Barack Obama to the UN to be the UN secretary so that they could carry out something else.
Right.
And so you're absolutely right. They're mad. The New World Order people are incredibly upset at the way this turned out, and so they're blaming the Russians. That's what happened, Gloria. That's what happened.
I tell you what, they've gotten me mad at how stupid that they are, and if they don't turn the view off like I've done, those women are worse than crazy.
Oh, they're worse than crazy. Yeah, especially Whoopi Goldberg.
Behar
Behar and Goldberg are absolutely insane. That is true.
Gosh, I could talk all night on my anger at them.
Well, listen, God bless and keep you. Thank you so much for
Well,
calling.
thank you so much for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Gloria. Yeah, folks, let me tell you something. There is, in fact, a certain madness, a level of crazy that is being approached in this country from the left that we have not seen. We thought we had witnessed everything we could witness as far as lunacy in this country is concerned. Let me tell you something that's really nutty is going to happen on Inauguration Day on the streets of Washington, D.C., your capital, on the nation's capital, on the streets of the nation's capital. The D.C. Cannabis Coalition, that's the D.C. Marijuana Coalition, they will be passing out joints, free joints. They can't sell them, so they're going to give them out free. You know, cannabis, marijuana is legal there in the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. And so they're going to be passing out joints on the streets of Washington, D.C. I think we need a joint task force to monitor that. Did you get that, Michelle? Joint task force? Get it? But anyway, they're going to be passing those out. So you have a level of lunacy in this country that is surpassing all other times and eras that we have seen in this country. And I got it. Somehow we stood by. We watched it happen. And I cannot see in any way, shape, or form that clouding the minds of Americans with marijuana smoke is going to help this situation at all. We talked to Derek Wilburn yesterday, and he'll tell you up there in Colorado where all this lunacy got started. Well, not really, but in Colorado, it hasn't helped. Maybe it's helped the economy a little bit, but it's actually harmed the citizenry as far as the legalization of recreational pot. CL, I'll be back with you in just a couple of minutes. DL back with you on this Wednesday here in the jewel cities of the Arklatex. You know, I was talking about law and order a little bit earlier, and I'm seeing here that there is an ABC News affiliate out of Bedford, Mass, saying that the sheriff there in Bedford has offered to allow inmates under his watch to help Trump build the wall. Now, of course, I know the liberals there in Massachusetts are probably having a conniption fit over that because, of course, you know, they're big on inmate rights and all that type thing. But, hey, labor, reduce sentence, work on the wall, reduce your sentence. I can see a win-win in that. I don't know about you, but I can see a win-win in that. And I applaud the sheriff for thinking about it. So we'll see how that plays out. We're going to follow this story and check it out for you. Now, speaking of inmates and soon-to-be inmates, who is it? Well, he is an inmate right now, Dylan Roof. You heard it here first. I may be wrong. I hope I am. I truly hope that I am, but you heard it here first. I would not be surprised if Dylan Roof, the shooter of 9 in South Carolina, the Baptist church shooter who is representing himself in the penalty phase of his trial, I would not be surprised if he gets life in prison and not the death penalty. Although everyone is screaming for the death penalty for him, and I certainly hope he gets it. I certainly hope he gets it. But I would not be surprised if he does not. We'll have to wait and see as far as that is concerned. Now, going back into where we were with the nutty Clinton supporters, and you can follow me on Twitter at RevCLBryant, at RevCLBryant. I had tweeted out a little bit earlier today that the nutty Clinton supporters are building a war room. And it started today with Chuck Schumer saying what he said. because Chucky Schumer and Hillary have been friends and cohorts for years. They're in New York. And Chuck Schumer, by saying that making America great again will make America sick again, that's code. Since everybody's in the code now, that was definitely code to the crazies that this is going to be the mantra. You got the Cannabis Coalition coming out. That's all a part of that. Believe me, it is. And then I look up, my wife and I happen to be home at the same time a little bit today, and we had on Fox. And I look up and I see an officer in a school body slamming this 15-year-old girl to the floor who was trying to help her sister who was in a fight. Now, officer, yes, break up the fight. There's no question. But let me tell you who you're helping by doing what you did. First of all, you made that young lady and her family very wealthy people. They're going to sue. They're going to sue. No question about that. And you also helped those who want to cause unrest in the country. Sometimes I'm almost just amazed at the kind of unrestraint and stupidity that, people who should have better judgment actually exemplify in handling bad situations when it comes to your kids. Listen, I don't mind discipline. Discipline. I grew up in a disciplined home. My dad and mom. Mom was the biggest part of that, though. But my dad and mom were disciplinarians. They were strict disciplinarians. And I understand, and I'm all for discipline. I cannot imagine just how warped and twisted I could have been if, in fact, they had not been as solid as disciplinarians as they were. So I'm all for that. And yes, I do understand that kids in schools today are out of control in some instances. Out of control, no respect for authority. But to pick up and body slam somebody's child in a school that is not posing a threat to you in the form of knife or gun, beyond the pale, man. It's beyond the pale. And you actually feed into, you actually help those who want to create the type of unrest that we're going to see in the streets of America. Follow me at RevCLBryant, at RevCLBryant on Twitter. Follow me at RevCLBryant. Then go to the CL Bryant Show and like our Facebook page there on Facebook. There is a concerted effort, folks. I'm telling you, there's a concerted effort that will definitely be in full swing after the 20th of this month, after the 20th of January. Nobody expected Donald Trump to become president of the United States. I actually believe, and maybe I'm totally wrong here, but I think DJT himself was surprised at the outcome. But he's the kind of guy who's able to just continue to glide along, even if he's surprised, even if he surprises himself. Now, Friday, the intelligence agencies of our nation, all 17, are going to report to DJT
1 minute
that the Russians did have something to do with the hacking of the DNC. But I'm like Gloria, an earlier caller who called in. I'm like Carl Higbee, an earlier guest who we had on the show. Even though if they did, it didn't really affect anything. I don't see what the effect was. But if they didn't, who's behind the lie and why? Be right back.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
Streaming live throughout the internet world, throughout the cyberspace world, is a story about a Chicago young man who was held hostage by evidently black young people and was humiliated while saying all types of epithets, derogatory epithets about Donald Trump. Checking the story out right now. Everyone in Chicago, black and white, if this story is true, is absolutely outraged. You know, there's just so much that people of conscience, and conscience does not have a color. It is something that is given to us because I believe in the what is known as the Imago Dei. In the Greek, the Imago Dei, the image of God. We know what's right and what's wrong. And that transcends color. And to do something like we are seeing here, and we're checking this out, I have Michelle checking it out, and we do have people on the ground there in Chicago who are checking out this story. We do have certain societal limits to lunacy. And I can tell you that if you have people who would stoop like this into this type of guttural,
video's real.
The video has been confirmed. It is authenticated. And so now, you know, you hear me talk about this all the time, and this is not code, law and order. When you have and I opened the show with this. I told you that in Chicago, if we replay the top of the show, I said Chicago top cop is saying that Black Lives Matter movement, at least in Chicago, is emboldening criminal behavior. And folks, that is a fact. Now, the question for you is, what are you prepared to do about it? Do we stick our heads in the sand and say, oh, it's because they don't have jobs. Oh, it's because of environment. Oh, it's because of whatever. Slavery, blame it on that. I could be a victim if I wanted to be because I know that my great-grandfather was a slave. I've heard the stories from my grandfather and my father. I could be a victim if I wanted to and choose to go down a criminal path if I wanted to in this country because I remember and was in fact subjected to Negro Day here in Shreveport, Louisiana at the State Fair. I have drank from colored and white water fountains. I have ridden on the back of the bus. And you have young people today who have everything, who have never seen the level of discrimination, who have never seen the level of racism that I have seen. They're angry for some reason. I'm not. Why? Because I know what it was like then, and I have seen the greatness of a nation with character and what it has provided for me now. I know what it's like to come from a family that should never have made it. I'm telling you that I'm sick of this. And my question to you is, what are you prepared to say, just like I have just said? No, those types of excuses are not excuses. This was somebody who willfully, maliciously, abducted a kid, put tape over his mouth, beat him, kicked him, for what? Because of Donald Trump, you say? Are you kidding me? Are you telling me that you don't have the self-control to contain yourself in the face of a political campaign? If that is so, you are a mad dog. And you need to be locked away somewhere because you're not fit to dwell among the rest of us. If you don't have that kind of self-control, you sicken me. And anyone like you, red, yellow, black, or white, you sicken me. And the rest of you out there, you had better take on the same type of attitude of what are we going to do about this? How are we going to restore law and order? And how are we going to weed this crap out from among us? Because that's what it is. And if you allow it to continue to fester, it will affect your children. I don't care what color they are. Don't you forget it. You had better be prepared, and you had better make up your mind about what you're going to do about it. I'm CO.
I knew a man, Bojangles, and he danced for you.
CL on a Wednesday here in the jewel cities of the Arklatex. Folks, I got to tell you, I am just outraged about what I have seen here in this particular video. And we told you that we would check in with our girl on the streets there in Chicago. That is Babette Holder, a regular on the show, a friend of mine, friend of the show. Babette, you are familiar with the video that we're referring to. Is it valid? Give us the update on that.
Yes. Good evening, CL.
Good
I'm going
evening.
to give you the update. I've been checking with fellow activist friends of mine in Chicago. Many of them are out there to counter protest against what BLM is doing. And they're very emboldened. I mean, they go out there. They are saying that it appears to be valid. Apparently, even the top cop in Chicago is aware of this torture of this poor person in this video. You know, this is a part of the problem when people are so emboldened, too, by their leadership. It has disintegrated to this type of Neanderthal behavior here.
Yes, and folks, now the top cop in Chicago, just for clarity, is a black cop. Is that right?
That's right. Superintendent Eddie Johnson.
And
and
he's taking on BLM as emboldening and providing cover for this type of behavior. And Babette, I cannot agree with him more as far as this is concerned. Once we lose sight of law and order, and we let it happen. We let this happen. Now, both of us, for full disclosure, folks, both Babette Holder and I are black conservatives. We have seen the ups and the downs of being black in America. So don't even try to go there with us. We understand what it is to be up and down as black people in America, but neither of us condone this type of, Babette, that was a fantastic way of describing it, Neanderthal behavior, because it is below human.
It is. It is despicable. And the woman in the video is laughing. She's laughing. And by the way, just so you know, they said the west side of Chicago. People in Chicago, in Illinois, understand west side, south side. You are basically referring to the predominantly black area of Chicago, and one of the areas with some of the most horrific of those numbers of gun shootings.
And I'm looking at those numbers, Babette, and I'm seeing that there have been over 4,000 shootings in this past year. There have been over 700 murders, deaths as results of those shootings, and 80% of those who died, 80% of those who were shot were black people. How is Black Lives Matter not speaking to that?
Right. Shot by a black person. Yeah, we're up 50% in shootings compared to last year. 56%, excuse me, 56. And every year has escalated. The national media has been talking about this, remember, since, 2013, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then to turn around, and yet BLM wants to say how people, now I know they'll turn around, and you know what they're going to say, CL? They're going to say, well, they're supporters. You know, that they try and always move these folks aside from them, as if we all take responsibility for our supporters. You know that, CL? I know that. We both have been on organizations and heads of organizations.
Yeah. Well, I can only say that this is despicable. Babette, and I want to thank you for being there for us. You're always available when we call, and you always lend us a helping hand in this. And your friendship to the show is invaluable, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Babette Holder, the first cousin of Eric Holder, totally different political ideas as far as the two of them are concerned, but she has confirmed our man Jay, and then I have Rochelle here, all of them confirming this story so that we can bring it to you. A young man was evidently kidnapped by thugs there in Chicago. No, that's not a code word. Thug is not a code word unless you're a thug. Don't go there with me. Okay? I have told people over and over, I am the former president of the NAACP, but I grew up on Milam Street in Shreveport, Louisiana. It wasn't quite the hood when in the area, in the section of Milam Street where I grew up in back in the day. But by the time I was 16, it was. I understand the streets. And no, you don't have to be that way. I'm CL. Be right back. CL back to close it out on this Wednesday here in the Ugly. Be sure to stay tuned with us throughout the rest of the week. Tomorrow night's show as well as Friday's show, I just believe, will be something that will draw you in and something that will leave you talking all weekend long. Now, I open the show by telling you that the strength of liberalism is that once you give somebody something, and you are perceived to be the person who is taking away the freedom or the free stuff. The free stuff. Once big government gives somebody something, and then the person who comes along and say, hey, look, this free stuff that's being given to you by government, big government, it has to be over. The person who says it's over is evil. That's the strength of liberalism. And it creates entitlement mentality in a nation like ours. It doesn't affect people in Greece. It doesn't affect people in France, where there are entitlement mentalities for many years, longer than here. But in a place that capitalism is king and the free market is king, and you having a bright idea and going to work, working hard, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps has been basically the order of the day for the 240 years that we have been in existence. Once you begin to create a mass of dependent and codependent people who expect things from government, and someone comes along and says, listen, we're going to teach you how to do this differently, how to do this for yourself so that you don't have to have government giving it to you. The person saying that is evil. That's what liberals have planted into the minds of a codependent people, and it is beginning to expand on college campuses. Red, yellow, black, and white kids are all trapped in that codependent mindset. We must break it. We must break it. I want to thank God for bringing us to the close of yet another day, and I want to thank Him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our minds. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL, and may God bless and keep you all.
To keep freedom alive, and to the families left behind, we'll stand by your side, and the bond